The rain at Cedar Hill Cemetery didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to wash the gray slate headstones clean of their history. Elena stood under a black umbrella that had seen better days, one of the metal spokes poking through the fabric, watching the water drip off the bronze casket of Arthur Sarge McAllister. She was the only one there. The priest, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, rushed through the service, his voice barely audible over the drumming of the rain and the distant hum of the highway. There were no eulogies, there were no weeping relatives, there were no folded flags presented to a grieving widow. There was just Elena, in her blue scrubs and a rain slicker, clutching a single store-bought bouquet of white carnations. The only flowers Arthur would tolerate because they didn't smell like a funeral home, as he used to say. "Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust," the priest muttered, closing his Bible with a definitive snap. He nodded to Elena, a quick, pitying gesture, and retreated to his dry car. Elena stepped forward and placed the carnations on the wet metal. "You stubborn old mule," she whispered, her throat tight. "You told me nobody would come. You were right." Arthur had been her patient for 3 years. He was a Vietnam veteran with a shattered hip, a failing heart, and a personality that could curdle milk. He had gone through 5 home health aides in 2 months before the agency sent Elena. He had thrown a bowl of oatmeal at her on day 1. On day 2, he had insulted her driving, her cooking, and her choice of shoes. But Elena had stayed. She stayed because she needed the money. Her own husband had left her with a mountain of debt and a beat-up Honda Civic, but also because beneath the layers of bitterness and cigar smoke, she saw a man who was terrified of being forgotten. She remembered the nights he would wake up screaming from nightmares of the jungle, and she would sit by his bed holding his calloused hand until his breathing slowed. She remembered how he would gruffly demand she turn on the TV to watch Jeopardy, only to pretend he was asleep while she answered the questions. She remembered the way he looked at the locked garage in his backyard, a detached structure he strictly forbade her from entering. "Just a heap of rust in there," he'd growl. "Don't you go snooping." Now, he was gone, and Elena was out of a job, standing in the mud, feeling a profound, hollow sadness for a man who had spent his final years trying to convince the world he didn't have a heart. She turned to leave, her boots squelching in the grass, when a black sedan pulled up behind her Honda. A man in a sharp gray suit stepped out, holding a large umbrella. He didn't look like a mourner. He looked like a shark. "Elena Rodriguez?" he asked, his voice crisp. "Yes?" "I'm sorry, the service is over. If you're looking for family—" "I'm not looking for family. I'm Mr. Sterling, Arthur's attorney. I was told I might find you here. In fact, Arthur bet me $50 you'd be the only one." Elena blinked. "He bet you?" "He did. He said, 'The girl's got a spine of steel and a heart of mush. She'll show up.'" Mr. Sterling gestured toward his car. "We need to talk. There are some matters regarding the estate." "I don't understand. Arthur didn't have an estate. He lived on a pension. He clipped coupons for tuna fish." Mr. McAllister, with a faint smile, was a very private man. "Please follow me back to the house." The drive back to the small, peeling Victorian house on Elm Street was a blur. When they arrived, the rain had stopped, leaving the world glistening and cold. Mr. Sterling unlocked the front door, a door Elena had unlocked with her own key 1,000 times, and they walked into the living room that still smelled of Arthur's menthol rub and old paper. Mr. Sterling placed a briefcase on the coffee table. Arthur had no living relatives. His children haven't spoken to him in 30 years. He outlived his wife by 2 decades. When he hired me to update his will last month, he was very specific. He pulled out a thick envelope and a set of keys. "He left a letter. He wanted you to read it before I explained the assets." Elena took the envelope. Her name was scrawled on the front in Arthur's shaky, jagged handwriting. She tore it open, her hands trembling. "Kid, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Good riddance. I was a pain in the ass, and I know it. I tried to run you off like I ran off the others. Figured it was easier to be alone than to let someone in and watch them leave. But you didn't leave. You took the oatmeal to the face and you cleaned it up and asked me if I wanted toast instead. You listened to my stories. You didn't pity me. You just treated me like a man. My kids are waiting for a payout. They're gonna be disappointed. I don't owe them a dime for showing up when the clock runs out. I owe the person who was there while the clock was ticking. Open the garage. The rust is yours. The house is yours. Don't sell the car cheap. It's got a 428 Cobra Jet. Semper Fi, Sarge. Elena looked up, tears blurring her vision. I don't. The garage? Mr. Sterling stood up. Shall we? They walked out the back door to the detached garage. The wood was rotting at the bottom and the paint was peeling. It looked like it was about to collapse. Elena had walked past this building every day for 3 years, assuming it was filled with old lawnmowers and spiders. Mr. Sterling handed her the keys. It's the silver one. Elena fumbled with the padlock, the metal cold against her skin. She pulled the heavy doors open, the hinges screaming in protest. Darkness swallowed the interior, smelling of oil, leather, and gasoline, a rich mechanical scent. Mr. Sterling flipped a switch on the wall. A single overhead bulb flickered to life. Elena gasped. In the center of the dusty garage, sitting under a heavy canvas tarp, was a shape. Elena pulled the tarp back, sending a cloud of dust into the light. It wasn't a heap of rust. It was a 1968 Ford Mustang GT Fastback, Highland green. It was immaculate. The chrome bumper shone like a mirror. The paint was deep and flawless. It looked like the car from Bullitt, a machine of pure, aggressive beauty. He bought it new, Mr. Sterling explained. Restored it himself over 20 years. He stopped driving it when his hip went, but he kept it maintained. A collector offered him $200,000 for it 5 years ago. He said no. Elena ran her hand over the cold metal of the hood, overwhelmed. 200,000? Likely more now, Sterling noted. But that's not all. He pointed to a workbench in the corner. On it sat a stack of red binders. Arthur wasn't poor, Elena. He lived like he was poor. He invested his military pension in tech stocks in the 90s. He bought Apple when it was rotting. He bought Amazon when it was just books. Elena felt her knees go weak. She leaned against the Mustang for support. What are you saying? The house is deeded to you, free and clear. The car is yours, and the portfolio, after taxes and fees, the trust in your name sits at roughly $1.2 million. Elena slid down the side of the car until she hit the concrete floor. She sat there, surrounded by the smell of engine oil and the ghost of Arthur's secret life. She thought about her broken Honda. She thought about the debt collectors calling her phone. She thought about the oatmeal on the floor. She thought about the grumpy old man who had pretended to sleep while she watched Jeopardy, who pushed the world away but had secretly been building a raft life for the one person who refused to let him drown. Why? She choked out. I was just his nurse. No, Sterling said softly, looking at the pristine car. To him, you were the only soldier left in his foxhole. Elena wept then, not for the money and not for the car. She wept because she thought she was taking care of a man who had nothing, only to realize he had given her everything. A week later, the neighbors on Elm Street looked out their windows to see something that would become a local legend. The garage doors of the old McAllister place opened, and a deep, guttural roar shook the quiet afternoon air. The Highland green Mustang backed out slowly, gleaming in the sun. Elena sat behind the wheel, wearing sunglasses, her arm resting on the doorframe. She revved the engine once, a salute to the empty house, and peeled out onto the main road, the V8 engine singing a song of freedom, leaving the past in the rearview mirror, exactly as the Sarge had intended.